It is so empowering. And it starts with women talking to each other.
Yeah.
And us just normalizing the conversation. I think it feels like tacky sometimes to talk about money.
Totally.
People will glaze over, but the right women want to talk about this.
And we need to make it more possible to talk. I mean, that's why we're trying to open up right now to people, even though some of what I'm saying, I'd rather not really admit out loud.
Oh my God. Yeah. I don't want to tell these stories.
Yeah, it's cringy.
I do not. Yeah.
Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Insights from the Couch. I'm Colette, and I'm here with Laura. And today we are diving into money, women and money. It's such a complicated relationship for so many reasons, but we really want to explore and bring to you today a conversation that's going to help us all at this midlife stage. What do we need to examine? What do we need to be thinking about when it comes to our relationship with money, with power dynamics? Because you may have a very different experience around money, even within the cohort of our age group, depending on how you grew up, what you've been through in the past. So without further ado, let's dive on in. We have so many things to talk about.
Oh my
right?
gosh.
I mean,
there's so many permutations of this, right? For women in our age group. You're so right. There are women, like you said, that have run companies and are earning and feel very in control of their finances. And there are other women that have been in like really long-term marriages, and money is like very much a mystery to them, or it's handled by, their partner.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And let me just say, I was just looking at some of Suze Orman's stuff. She kind of started this movement. I remember years ago being in either high school or middle school and watching her on Oprah.
Same.
Talking about women and money.
She wears like the same pair of earrings. She looks one pair of earrings, which I've loved
decades.
that.
Yeah. Yeah, but I was looking back at some of her stuff and more recent stuff. And she said, even though she's been talking about this for all of these years, and she knows all of these high-powered women who, women are running almost 50% of the companies that exist in America now are run by women, which is freaking amazing, right? And more women go to college than men. Women are responsible for more than 40% of investments made. I mean, it's just
crazy.
Right. So things have changed dramatically. But what Suze Orman said is that it amazed her how all of these women she knew intimately who were really successful and sharp were still totally in the dark when it came to their finances and kind of afraid of them. And I know that doesn't represent everyone, but I think it does speak for a lot of women.
Oh, yeah. And I think that it seems like it's a really bifurcated thing where some women have really come along a long way with this. And then there are other women that are really still stuck. I mean, I know in my own money story that like men handled money in my family, and I wanted them to handle it. Like I kind of looked at money as like a big pile of snakes. Like, oh my God, just like keep it away from me. Keep it working. I don't understand it. I don't want to touch it. I'm going to screw it up. And it's taken years. I mean, I'm still in the middle of this process, which is really, I think it goes back to what, and if you listen to anybody who talks about money, like the financial feminist or rich BFF, there are a lot of women in this space right now.
Which is great.
Yeah, which is so good. And they're always going to start with like, what's your money history? What's your first money memory? Like this is as psychological as anything.
Absolutely.
It's personal and rooted in like scarcity mindset and like fear and shame. There's so much around that.
Right.
So I think that we can't understate how personal these things are for women.
You're bringing up an important point that this is not, and one of the reasons we wanted to have this conversation, and we'll probably have many more about this topic, is you and I are also on our own personal journey with this, which I'll share a little bit about too. But that this is a psychological issue. Your relationship with money is really deeply psychologically rooted in ways that people don't often realize. I know I didn't realize. And honestly, even years into being a therapist, I didn't realize what a psychological issue money was. And I'll just share a little bit about my personal story. And then I want to talk about some of the themes that come up in counseling that we both see. But for me, I grew up in this very bizarre environment where everyone around me was extremely wealthy. My family was not extremely wealthy. I mean, we were, solidly comfortable, I would say, and all of these things are very subjective. But I was significantly less wealthy than pretty much everyone around me. And as a result, you would think this would make money such a thing for me. But what happened was that my parents, who poured everything into trying to give me the best advantages, kind of set me up in this group of people that had a different level of means. And in this particular cohort, money was not discussed. That was considered impolite. This was a New England aesthetic. I went to school in Connecticut. It was considered ostentatious and in poor form to talk about or show off money. Some of these people with multi-million dollars were driving around in beat up Ford station wagons. So to me, I just thought money existed. It was the backdrop that provided this, what I now look back on as a very privileged life that I didn't even understand how privileged it was at the time. But money I just sort of expected that money would always be there. Somebody else made it. The things you wanted to do happened. And I realized how obnoxious this might sound to people. But I want to also add that, I went from that and into a marriage in which I did have a lot of resources into a place after my divorce where I had no money at all, to the point of like bankruptcy and scraping the barrel. So lest you think I'm like, oh, la-di-da, I had this charmed life, I've been here and here. And what really forced me to learn and re-examine my relationship with money was when I had to.
Amen. Like, which goes back to our purpose episode. I feel like until you're forced to grapple with this, this is something that gets like kind of kicked down the road. And my money story is just as kind of like icky in some ways. I grew up in a really wealthy family, and I think like generational wealth where a lot of the people around me were kind of ashamed of their relationship with money. I know my dad was always super uncomfortable with it, but it was just there, and it provided this life that just like you, it just was so normal. I went to boarding school. They were underdeveloped. A lot of them were like psychologically underdeveloped and just did not have to be in the world. And it enabled my whole generation to kind of, especially me and my brother, like, because my dad died early, to like inherit this thing that we were so ill-equipped to handle. And I think sometimes inherited wealth can be the bane of people's existence. I know the world's tiniest violin exists for this problem. They're like, oh, tough life. But having to use your own body weight to sort of get through problems and navigate life is what you need. We need skills as women. We need experiences as women. If you are enabled, as I was, to sort of hold yourself outside of that, your self-confidence just withers. And I see that all over some of the women I see. And I have such compassion for it because I understand how hard it is. And until you kind of face plant, like you're describing after your divorce, into the real contingencies of life, that's when you grow, and that's when you can get real. And so, we've both been on some of those.
And
in some
in
of those
many
places.
ways, despite the seeming privilege of it, it's a tremendous disservice. My parents, and I love them to death, but they set me up for a life, an expectation of a life that then I didn't have. And I didn't know what it took to develop that. My parents came from immigrant parents who came to this country with nothing, and they worked their asses off. I mean, my mom's a teacher, an attorney. My dad's a doctor. My parents killed themselves to earn what they earned. And then they wanted to give me everything.
Yeah.
But in the process, what got lost was teaching me that I needed to learn how to activate, not just in an intellectual way, but in a fiscally responsible way, so that I was never dependent on a man and I could create the life I wanted. And I didn't really start doing that for myself until my mid 30s, where I wish I had started younger. So
Yeah.
when I relate to people in counseling, and we've talked about this, I see the woman like us or versions of us, long-term marriages, married to someone they met when they were young, very smart, capable women who could have had all kinds of careers and chose to stay home with kids or to take a job where they are not the primary breadwinner. Maybe they have a job and they earn something, but the unspoken thing is that the husband is still earning the money and the wife's job is like something that gives her a little boost or something for her to do or helps her feel like she contributes. And then I see these women who I envy in a way, not to in any sense take away from hardships they suffered, but maybe they didn't grow up with a lot, or they watched people really suffer, or they were kept out of opportunities and they grew up with this hunger to
Yeah.
achieve and thrive. And sometimes it borderlines on a fear, right? That scarcity mindset
It
where
often
there's,
does.
yes, yes,
Fear is a huge motivator.
right. Where it's like, I don't want to be like that. I don't want to
Yeah.
live like that. Nobody's going to take care of me but me. And even if they're married or committed to someone who's wealthy and that person's like, you don't have to work so hard, they would not move away from their work or anything because they're too scared to. It's their
Yeah.
driver.
Yeah, it's so funny. Like it's so personal. Like I
Yeah.
think my money injury was like I watched my mother have this like super privileged life with my dad, and it was a beautiful life. I think that was the thing that she could really control in that marriage was that even if it felt like crap, she could make it look good. And I really like absorbed that. And when she decided to leave my dad when I was 10, I thought, why are you throwing this away? Like, you stupid woman. I think I really felt that.
Yeah.
And I had this drive inside of me, just like you're describing that woman who's like, I'm never going to let this happen. I was like, I am going to recreate this life. And when you want to recreate a life that was like super wealthy, you're asking money to do so many things.
Yes.
And it came from such a wound in me and such an underdeveloped place. And I look back and I'm like, oh my God, I could have played those cards so differently. But I was really catering to like a very childlike part in myself of like, I'm going to
Yes.
reclaim this life that was thrown away.
I think sometimes when we're young, what we think we want, what's been modeled for us, what we're
Hmm.
after, it just doesn't turn out to be the mecca that we thought it was going to be.
Yeah.
It's like a
Yeah.
mirage and then you get it or you pursue it and you discover it isn't as possible, it isn't as fulfilling.
Yeah.
And something I see a lot as a couples therapist is women who, despite these times where women are earning so much money, women who really feel financially trapped in their marriages, whether they are or aren't. I mean, if you've been married 20 plus years, you're going to get half of all the shared assets in most states. That's how it works. Even though alimony laws are changing and lifetime alimony seems to be largely going away, most women married a long time, if they're married to someone and they haven't been the primary earner, they're going to come out with enough to survive, but they're still terrified. And it really keeps people stuck in relationships sometimes.
Women want money they definitely need money for safety. That's a
Yes.
huge piece. I hear that all the time in counseling. Like, I don't feel safe. I don't feel like I'm being planned for. I hear that a lot.
I've felt some of that.
Oh my God, I feel that too. So it's like we want it for safety and we're not sure we can keep ourselves safe. I think many women, especially the ones that have been in those long marriages, are
Yeah.
like, am I going to be okay if I decide to do this?
Yeah.
And then at the same time, women are the spenders in their homes largely. Like, we are
Yes.
tasked with making families work, providing for the things that kids need. I'm grappling with that right now. I've got to get a couple of my kids driving. I've got to get SAT prep courses. Everything for kids costs money. And so you're the spender and you're trying to achieve safety. And then there's this other thing that you and I were talking about where women use money and status, and this is like so icky to talk about, for visibility and self-worth.
Yeah.
Young women from a young age are pouring tons of money into their skincare, their hair, they are their own valuable product that they're
Absolutely.
maintaining.
I see that with my daughters. My daughters are 20 and 23, and they spend more on their treatments and put more time and energy into it
Yes.
than I do. But
Same.
we've been trained that way. So a lot of women are still hooked into all of that and spending a lot of resources there and using it as like a surrogacy for self-worth.
But if you think about it, being pulled in all those directions, like I need to look good. I
Mm-hmm.
need to present well. I need to look,
Yep.
and perfectionism is its own thing, but it's that self-protective, like I have it all together.
Yeah.
And then I need to actually provide all these things for my family or my home. And then I actually want to feel safe and planned. So like we're in all different directions.
It's a quandary.
Yeah.
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 Yeah. And then not to mention add on to it, if you are that woman who really wants to have a thriving career and make money, you get such fucked messages from society about whether or not you can have it all. The pendulum swings. Yes, women can have it all. They can raise the family and the big career. Oh, no, you can't. You have to pick one. It's still so confusing, especially when you consider that women are still responsible for, most of us are working, most women are working, and we're still responsible for 75% of domestic duties. So how do we reconcile all of this with money? It's complicated. And I think what we're trying to start to say here is let's talk about it, not once, not twice,
All the time.
consistently. Let's look at it. Let's examine our psychological relationship with money, how what we learned when we're young might not be serving us, what expectations we have that just feel like the way we view the world, but maybe are more subjective than we realize, and where are the areas for growth? One of those we talked about is, and I hate this, talk about icky. I hate that I ever thought like this, truly, but I'll out myself. That whole idea as women of like, all right, I'm married. So what you earn should be like ours. And what I earn should be a little more for me.
I say this all the time.
It's messed up.
And women our age,
Right.
like you said, it's the younger generation. They're like splitting things. It's
Totally.
very
Even
normal.
married. My younger couples, like say under 40, come in, and a lot of them, even married, charge this credit card for this week's couples session and then charge my credit card. They have separate bank accounts. They're both working. They really have a different power dynamic. But for our generation,
it's like you're paying all the household bills, and when I get paid, I'm going to go get Botox.
Yeah. Oh my God. That's me. I mean, right now, my husband is, and I have moved away from this attitude, I think, but then I look at some of the ways I'm still in it. Like right now, I'm on a sabbatical working on my book, and my husband is very generously covering the household expenses during this time. And I just got Botox. Right?
Of course you did.
Right, because I have to not have railroad tracks in the middle of my forehead. I'm on video, and right, it's back to what you're saying, like the upkeep. And I don't even consider myself a vain person at all. But obviously I'm somewhat vain.
I see that all the time. And I think that there's also this thing with women in our generation where it's like we want to work on in one part of us wants to work and another part of us will very much wants to be taken care of. And this can be such a hotbed for resentment if that pendulum swings too far in any one way. And I've grappled with this too. Like
Me too.
I really do have a fundamental belief that like a man should be taking care of pretty much everything, which I'm eradicating that part of me actively, but it isn't going away easily.
And while not every woman has that view, many do.
Yeah.
We see it all the time in counseling. Some of this stuff that we're giving voice to, because it sounds so shitty, I think most of us intellectually reject. I don't really think that my money should be for me and my husband's money should take care of me, or, that a man should save me. But on some level, some subconscious level, the way I was raised,
And
what I
men
was,
believe it too. Men come
yes,
with it too. They believe they ought to provide. And this is such like a pain point for so many men our age. Is like they want to provide everything. And when they can't, that's like a tough place.
yeah,
I talk a
yeah,
lot with men and money because it's so
yeah,
much like where their worth lies
yeah.
and their value. And that's the thing that's really woken me up more than anything is listening to men struggle, how they provide.
Right, because if we as a society have historically viewed that as men's responsibility and women's expectation, then of course men's self-worth is tied to that. And not everyone can, especially this world, everything has become so expensive. It's just, unless you're in that
Yeah.
0.01%, it's
You
very
can't leave
difficult.
the house for less than $300.
Yeah, I mean, it's really gotten the American dream is out of whack. But I think that's what I was going to ask you. Do women still want men to take care of them financially?
Well, I think as they get older, and I've told you this, I have like a little spate of men that I'm seeing whose wives have left them in the golden years as problems have arisen in the relationship, but mainly they don't need to work through it anymore. They have financial means and they're like, I want to be in charge of my own life and my own home and my own peace.
Yes.
And so I think at a certain age, women are very, very happy to take care of themselves if they can.
I agree. I see this a ton where a marriage has gone on for years and years and years, and all of a sudden the wife, let's not even say she inherits a huge amount of money, but enough to feel secure.
Yeah.
Right? Something changes and she's got her own money. And suddenly she's like, you know what? I've been fucking miserable with you for
Yeah.
20 years and I'm not doing it anymore. I've tried to ask you to change or do this or that. You don't hear me. You've blown me off for years and now I'm done. And all of a sudden these husbands are, let's go to couples counseling. I hear you. Let's do that. Right. They're just
Yep.
panting and exerting to try to catch up. Because once somebody really has the leverage and they're willing to walk, it's a whole different thing.
It really is. And like you said, it's really at that stage of life, it's not men who want to leave, it's women who want to leave.
Yeah.
Men get quite a bit out of being married.
Actually, research shows men get a lot more out of being married than women.
Yeah.
And I know this is anecdotal. I don't know what the real research is on how many women versus men seek divorce. And I imagine this might be hard to study, but I can tell you as a very busy couples therapist, the vast majority, like 90+% of my couples, it is the woman who is considering leaving, not
Yep.
the man.
Yeah.
And I don't think that used to always be the case, 30, 40 years ago, because men would just trade an older wife for a new younger wife.
That's definitely in a different phase of life that would definitely happen. But yeah, I think as women get financial independence or they have so many more choices. And when you don't have choices, you do have to stay in substandard situations.
Right. So I think also part of this is, there isn't only one way to live or do this. There's nothing
No.
wrong with staying home and having a traditional relationship. And plenty of people do that happily. One person earns the money. There are stay-at-home dads now all over the place in the younger generations. There's no one right way.
Yep.
But as women, we have got to develop a more fully embodied 360 relationship with money, with spending, with earning. And I know for me, with these antiquated views I had in the past about how I should be taken care of and money would be provided, now that I earn, even though I'm married, we do function like some of these younger couples. It's a second marriage. We keep our finances pretty separate. We pay for our house together. And other than that, we have our own accounts and we split things. Our earnings are not far off from one another. And the sense of worth I get out of money, and I'm not wealthy by any means. I'm a therapist, right? How much money can a therapist possibly earn? But I make a good living. I work hard for it. And the amount of like pride and value in myself I
Yes.
feel from that, it's transformed my confidence and my relationship with myself.
Amen to that. And I second that as somebody who thought I'd never have to deal with money, like never even have to like look or consider having to navigate money. I think I've grown up a ton in the last couple of years, and my views are rapidly evolving, and my relationship with earning is vastly different. And I look back at my younger self and I think about me versus my brother. My brother was always like capable of doing so many things. Like he could rewire the house, he could frame houses. He was always just, he had a ton of skills. And I thought, like, what the hell was I doing when I was a young woman? I was like, oh, I think I was in my mirror learning how to like French braid my hair for
Right.
hours. That's what I was doing.
Right.
And I was like, why haven't I put skills more at the forefront? And I hope young women really begin to build skills, and women our age. If you don't know where to start, just start by building your skills.
Yeah.
Try things, get out there, like,
Yeah.
because you can earn money. And it
Yes.
feels really good because actually money is not that hard. Like there's just some basic things and living within your means and investing. And it's not actually that hard to learn. You can Google all of it. It's the emotional piece.
Exactly.
And if you are willing to grapple with that, it's embarrassing. I mean, part of my money story is like so embarrassing. I just like can barely talk about it sometimes. But being willing to do that work
Yes.
will open you up. And one book I would really, really recommend is Kate Levinson's work. She is a therapist. I think she's a psychologist, and she wrote the book Emotional Currency. So
Mm.
if people want a place to start and they're like, yeah, I got to start looking at some of this stuff, start there and start with your own money story because all of the baggage comes from that.
And the huge role that emotions play. You're right. I've had to learn all of these things the hard way, and now I enjoy it. I used to have a story that like I'm just not good at money. I
Yeah.
don't get that. My intelligences are all very liberal arts focused
Oh
and
God, I have that story too.
literature and history and pondering and pontificating, but not these practical skills. And that's bullshit, first of all. We're smart
Yes.
women. I don't know where I got that idea, or I guess I do, but it was a lie. And as I've dived in, I've enjoyed, being an investor in the stock market, having a robust retirement account that I've funded myself, really learning those things. And the biggest thing I learned that it's never too late to learn, because I started not that long ago, is that it's really not just how much you earn. In fact, it's much more how much you save.
Yes.
And that at any level, you can really prioritize what's important to you and save for the
Yeah.
future. And it feels so good. I mean, this is the thing. What is more powerful as a woman than feeling capable and in control of your life?
Teachers are some of the like most common millionaires because
Right.
they're like steady Eddie with investing and they have
Yes.
pensions and things like that very often. But you're right. It is so empowering, and it starts with women talking to each other
Yeah.
and us just normalizing the conversation. I think it feels like tacky sometimes to talk about money.
Totally.
I mean, people will glaze over, but the right women want to talk about this.
And we
And
need to make it more possible to I mean, that's why we're trying to open up right now to people, even though some of what I'm saying, I'd rather not really admit out
oh
loud.
my God, yeah, I don't want to tell these stories.
Yeah, it's
I do
cringy.
not. Yeah.
But also, then otherwise, how do we grow? And how do we remove some of the shame and embarrassment and fear and get honest? It all starts with getting honest with yourself I think about what you've learned and where do you want to go?
And just start because things can really change in a year. Momentum is all we're after most of the time.
Yeah.
It's like we just want to be better than we were last year and evolve. And we can evolve with money pretty quickly.
Yeah, because while we're saying the younger generations have really changed a lot of this and will do things very differently from how we did, our generation did, I think that we can, whatever the circumstances, even if you're not earning, I wish I could go back in time and have started doing some of the things I'm doing earlier, even if it was as simple as saving for retirement when I was 25,
Oh
when
my
I just was
gosh.
like,
I would
what?
have started my Roth IRA at like 15.
Yeah. And there may be some of you listening who are like, God, these two ladies are freaking clueless. We have this figured out. And you know what I say to that? Amazing.
Awesome. Yeah.
Beautiful. I wish I could have learned from you sooner, but I think there are people out there that just push it to the side, whatever the story about it is, and ignore money. And you don't want to wake up one day and feel like you don't have choices
Yes.
because you're not educated about your own finances or you didn't pay attention to it or plan for it.
Yeah. Or you deferred to a partner and you never
Yeah.
invested your time or knowledge. And now you're just scared of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I just wanted to say one more thing about I was thinking about a friend I have from childhood who, by all rights, like has it all, maybe the perfect life. And it's not even just from the outside. And I don't want to say who this person is, so I won't give too many details. But, I had a conversation with her not that long ago where she talked about how, I mean, she is beautiful, wealthy, does not have really a care in the world. And she talked about how never earning her own money, even at a like small level, is a real source of shame and dissatisfaction for her. And
Yep.
so I think, there's something to be said for whether it's a big career or a smaller job, just the self-esteem emotionally and psychologically that comes from earning something on your own.
I couldn't agree more on this. And this is why I feel like inherited wealth or wealth that comes from outside of yourself can be so destructive. And it makes you feel your self-esteem feel so squashed and you feel incapable of putting yourself into the room. Because
Yes.
in some ways, I mean, I remember I felt like, well, I have everything I need. I don't need to do X, or it's not even my place to do X, or people will think I'm ridiculous.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so it's like you just create your own story that you don't put yourself into the world. But the longer you do that, the smaller you get.
Yeah.
So put
Yeah.
yourself in the world, even in the smallest of ways, and build
Yeah.
a little
And let's
momentum.
talk about money. I mean, I want to do something about this, you and I, like every season, because,
Definitely.
and I know there's a million people talking about it, but good. We need to talk about this and just destigmatize it and raise our collective awareness as women.
Yeah. And I think there's so many more women in the financial space. You can find female financial advisors now. I
Yeah.
mean, there's
Yeah.
just women have investing clubs. I mean,
Love it.
yeah,
I
the
love it.
bro finance Chad idea is actively being debunked.
Oh, and I have some female friends who are so sharp about money and on it, and I admire them
Oh, I
and want to
love
learn from
that.
them. Me
Yeah,
too.
same.
Me too.
I just want more of that in my life.
Yes, me too. So, all right. Well, I hope everyone got something out of this and maybe heard a little tidbit you can relate to. We're going to talk about this some more
And
in the
email
future.
us with anything you want us to talk about or even your own, personal quandary with this,
Yeah.
and we'll talk about it.
Anything, go to our website, insightsfromthecouch.org. Send us a message. Let us know what you want to talk about. Email us with questions and we'll address them in the podcast. We'd love to hear from you. So thanks
Yep.
everyone for listening, and we'll see you next time.